In the 2023-24 season, a number of Premier League teams found themselves oddly restricted. This was the result of the league's PSR, standing for Profit and Sustainability rules. It meant that teams found themselves, despite their wealth, unable to sign new players, or in some cases, having to sell players to meet the targets. The consequences of not meeting these targets were felt in the form of points deductions, the first in the league in decades. And in April 2024, the league announced further controversial changes that will have a big impact on what clubs can spend in the transfer market this summer. So what are those changes, and why will some clubs be impacted more than others? Well, first, why the change? Well, the rules came under heavy scrutiny in 2024. Points deductions to Everton and Nottingham Forest were highly contentious, and in Everton's case, later reduced on appeal. Now, the Premier League is moving to a squad cost ratio guideline, similar to UEFA and La Liga, and clubs have voted in favour of further exploring a transfer spending cap linked to the broadcasting revenue of the lowest ranked club. Well, the current PSR states that Premier League clubs are allowed to lose a maximum of £15 million in any 3-year reporting period, which can be increased to a maximum allowable loss of £105 million if owners provide £90 million in secured equity funding. Applying this led to points deductions for Everton and Nottingham Forest, both of which fell outside this limit in the most recent 3-year reporting period. The proposed new framework has two parts. The first, the squad cost control ratio, which limits club spending to 85%, 70% for clubs in the UEFA competition, of revenue on wages, amortized transfer fees, and agent fees combined in any season. And secondly, an upper hard or absolute cap on spending on wages, transfers, and agents fees linked to the broadcasting revenue of the lowest ranked Premier League club. So immediately, a couple of things stand out. Firstly, the 3-year reporting period has been replaced by a yearly check, implying benefits of one very positive season can no longer be reaped over multiple subsequent years. The upper hard cap is meant to drive equalisation. So even if Manchester City's revenue post-winning the treble is massive, and thereby enables a massive squad cost limit since that is linked to revenue, their squad cost is still capped by what the lowest ranked Premier League club earns from broadcasting. Unsurprisingly, most clubs have voted in favour of further exploring this spending cap. Manchester United, Manchester City and Aston Villa voted against, while Chelsea abstained from voting. But it is worth noting that this hard cap hasn't been voted in yet. What has been voted for is a willingness to further explore. In fact, the Premier League decided not to put this anchoring-based hard cap up for a vote in the recently concluded AGM on the 6th of June. This was due to strong opposition from the PFA, which remains totally opposed to any form of salary cap, even an indirect one caused by anchoring. But let's examine both of these new PSR elements carefully. Which clubs would they impact most severely? Would they make any difference to spending? Starting with the squad cost control ratio. The squad cost is calculated as the sum of 3 elements: player wages, player amortization, and agent or other intermediary fees. This is then divided by the sum of revenue from football operations and profit from player sales to give us the squad cost control ratio. The ratio has to be under 85% for clubs not in UEFA competition and under 70% for clubs in UEFA competition. It's worth noting that clubs in UEFA competition will benefit from additional revenue, although that's significantly higher only for Champions League clubs. It's worth noting the impact of revenue here. The traditional top 6, minus Chelsea, are all comfortable on the squad cost ratio even after applying the harder 70% guideline. This is because there is a massive revenue gap between the Premier League's top 6 and the rest. In fact, even with the top 6, Manchester City's revenue plus profit from player sales is upwards of £830 million, more than 25% higher than second-placed Manchester United and almost double Arsenal's. Even applying a 70% guideline gives Manchester City an available squad cost limit of £580 million. City's actual squad cost is the second highest in the Premier League, at around £470 million. This is still £110 million lower than the limit, leaving City with massive financial wiggle room on transfer spending and wages. No wonder the other clubs wanted a hard cap. But let's look at the hard cap a little more closely. The proposed cap, which was voted for further exploration, was 5 times the broadcasting revenue of the lowest ranked Premier League team. That was Southampton during the 2022-23 season at around £105 million. That would imply a hard cap of £525 million. Manchester City's current squad cost would still fall below that limit. In fact, all Premier League clubs, again minus Chelsea, would fall below the limit. So is the hard cap then much ado about nothing? Well, not exactly. The 5 times multiplier is up for debate. And that's crucial. If it were to become a 4 times or a 3 times multiplier, then suddenly multiple clubs would fall outside of the cap. And that's why the decision to explore it further is a big one and could still come with significant implications for all teams. So where will that debate eventually land? Well, we're not going to speculate. For now, the Premier League is trialling a shadow anchoring scheme in 24-25 and released a statement saying it is intended not to have an impact unless significant revenue divergence of clubs occurs. So it's safe to assume that at least for next season, the hard cap is indeed much ado about nothing. But one thing's clear overall. The changes to PSR, while not extremely stringent, will ensure clubs remain in check each individual year instead of relying on prior year's results. It will also ensure some degree of equalization. And hopefully, as more clubs start to compete with the top 6, that revenue gap could narrow. Theoretically, it could create a more equitable Premier League competition.